You're in debt hell because of your pointless infertility treatment. Years after our divorce, my ex-husband approached me with a sarcastic smile. We were in a famous tourist spot. Unexpectedly, we met again. It's pitiful how hard you try for nothing. He looked down on me and sneered. After the divorce, he remarried and was blessed with children. He lives happily with his family. He thinks he's better off and looks down on me. Whose story are you talking about? I gently touched my slightly swollen belly. I wonder who really needs infertility treatment. After that, my ex-husband would learn a shocking truth. No matter how much he raged or clung to me, it was too late. The beginning of my ex-husband's downfall. The false happiness he gained from his misunderstanding would crumble away. Those who find happiness. Those who miss it. Our reunion clearly divided our future lives. My name is Tiffany. I work at a travel agency. I suggest various plans to customers and arrange satisfying trips. I found great fulfillment in my job. Steve and I married after a workplace romance. As the new manager of the branch where I worked, Steve was very calm and always treated me with a kind smile. During the busy season, like summer vacation, we worked late into the night. We had fun talking and supported each other through tough times, gradually spending more time together. Eventually, we became aware of each other, started dating, and got married. After marriage, I was transferred to another branch. The travel agency job involves a lot of overtime and is hard. You've worked hard without complaining so far. You could take it easy as a full-time homemaker after we're married. His kindness made me feel very happy. However, I found fulfillment in my job and had a dream I wanted to fulfill. For that dream, I had been living frugally and saving money. So, I decided to continue working after marriage. Steve respected my decision. And we worked hard at separate branches. We understood each other's work and shared a simple happiness, comforting each other and enjoying a drink together every night. 2 years have passed since our marriage. We haven't been able to have a baby yet. I felt a bit anxious as we hadn't had a child after 2 years. I lost my parents when I was a student. Being an only child, I felt lonely. That's why I longed for a large family. So, after marriage, I wanted at least 2 children, if not a large family. Don't worry. They will come to us in time. He accepted my feelings. And he agreed on trying for children. I wonder if I'm infertile. Maybe I should go to the hospital for a checkup. I looked down. Why are you getting discouraged? It's going to be okay. But if you're worried, you should get checked at the hospital. He gently stroked my head. He always understood me. I was so moved I nearly cried. Then, I visited the gynecologist and underwent several tests. The numerous tests revealed no particular abnormalities in my body. It's good that there were no abnormalities. After seeing the test results, my husband happily said, "See? I told you. There's no need to rush. The baby will surely come to us." I have been saved by my husband's gentle smile so many times. I felt much lighter. There's a test for men next. It's a short procedure, so could you possibly go during a break from work? I presumed there wouldn't be any issues with my husband either. But just to be safe, I wanted him to undergo the test. Of course, I was confident he would agree readily. Huh? Why should I take the test? Infertility issues are surely a woman's problem, and it would be pointless for me to go. His response was unexpected. It might seem pointless, but just to be safe. Besides, if there is an issue on the male side, there are treatments available. Could you please go? His expression darkened slightly. I understood his reluctance to take the test. If a problem was found, it might hurt his pride as a man. This was a delicate issue. I knew it wasn't good to push too hard. It doesn't have to be right away. Whenever you have time. Yet, he remained silent. The day ended without getting his response. One day, we visited my husband's family home. It was my mother-in-law's birthday, and we brought a bouquet and a gift. When my husband was young, his father had an affair and disappeared. Since then, my mother-in-law had raised him on her own. I heard she had gone through a lot of hardships. She turned 65 this year and had retired from her job, which she had kept up while raising her child without neglect. I respected my mother-in-law, Mary, as a woman. I hoped she could spend her time happily and peacefully from now on. I was confident the bouquet and gift would make her happy. With that belief, I opened the door to my in-laws' house. So, welcome. She greeted us with a bright smile. What beautiful flowers. And this, a bath salt set. I'm so happy you remembered how much I love baths. As expected, Mary was very pleased. It should have been a pleasant time for the three of us. I'm happy with the presents and bouquet, but I'd like to see a grandchild's face soon. Her words changed the atmosphere completely. I was at a loss for words and glanced at my husband. But he remained silent. Tiffany, I understand work is busy, but there are more important things than work. You need to face your own body and work on having children. There are infertility treatments available now. I had already faced my own body. I had taken the tests. There were no issues found. I want to hold a cute grandchild in my arms soon. I'm waiting, Tiffany. She too assumed that infertility issues lay solely with the woman. Why doesn't she say anything to my husband? Yes. I couldn't argue. I was afraid of causing a rift between my mother-in-law and me if I did. I wished my husband would explain properly. However, he remained silent throughout. It felt as though the blame for not being able to conceive was entirely placed on me. I'm expecting to see a baby in your belly by my next birthday. Her words weighed heavily on me. Being given a deadline only added to the sense of urgency. I told myself not to worry, but my mother-in-law's words echoed in my head constantly. I couldn't remember anything from the conversation that followed. In the evening, we left my in-laws' house. On the way home, my husband and I walked side by side in silence. The setting sun cast our long shadows on the sidewalk. I kept looking at those shadows. My husband's shadow was pointing straight ahead. I wondered what he was thinking. How did he interpret what my mother-in-law said today? I wanted to ask, but couldn't. No, I was afraid to ask. I was afraid of being disappointed by his words again. We returned home without saying a word. I'm hungry. Let's have dinner. He acted as if nothing had happened. He probably planned to end the day without addressing my feelings. I decided to speak up. Hey, Steve, about what your mom said today. He turned to me with his usual smile. Huh? What about it? Was that smile fake? She said she wants grandchildren. I looked him straight in the eye. Yeah, but since we can't do anything about it, we just have to wait, right? That's not what I wanted to say. She told me to think more about my body than work. And about undergoing fertility treatment. But I've already faced these issues and took the tests, and there was no problem. His expression gradually changed. Why didn't you say anything then? It feels like it's all my fault. But it's not me who's not facing the issue, it's you, right? I didn't mean to say it like that. But once I started, the words just poured out. All my pent-up frustration exploded. What the heck? Always about the tests. That's what I'm saying, right? The problem of infertility is supposed to be with the woman. And what my mom said wasn't wrong. It's not my fault. He shouted, his face turning red. He was not the man I knew. I know it's not your fault, Steve. It's wrong to blame anyone for infertility. I just want us to move forward. Even if we need treatment, we have to start with the tests. No matter how much we argued, we couldn't accept each other's views, and we were at an impasse. This is too much hassle. I'm hungry, I'm going out to eat. With that, he left the house. I was left alone in the quiet room. Suddenly, I felt drained and slumped onto the sofa. The image of my husband shouting came back to me. Was it my fault? Had I angered my gentle husband? This wasn't what I intended. I just wanted to be understood. I wanted us to work together to forge a future for the two of us. That's why the tests were necessary. I couldn't stop crying. In the quiet room, only the sound of my sobbing could be heard. The next morning, my husband returned home in silence. You said you were going out to eat, but where did you spend the night? I was worried. He didn't seem to listen to my words. It doesn't matter. Leaving just those words, he left for work. It was our first big fight. Such times happen too. Steve's mood should be better by tonight. With that thought, I also headed to work. I couldn't help but sigh all morning. However, Steve's mood showed no signs of improving even after several days. He started leaving home earlier and returning late. On weekends, he would go out without saying a word and come back around the time I was going to bed. The time we used to spend together as a couple had drastically reduced. It seemed like he was avoiding me. I no longer knew how to interact with him. Eventually, this silent living became our new normal. I couldn't even remember the times when we cherished our moments together. What had made us this way? Was suggesting the test really so wrong? And then, Steve stopped coming home altogether. You've been away a lot lately, where are you staying? Our conversations had become back to back. Work's been so busy, I keep missing the last train. So I've been staying at a business hotel near the office. He, too, had his back turned to me. I see. Then, he headed to the bedroom. At some point, the living room had become my sleeping area. The excuse of work and missing the last train seemed far-fetched. It wasn't our busy season. He was hiding something. My suspicion turned into reality a few weeks later. Steve would come home once every few days, dump a pile of laundry on me, pack his clean clothes and underwear in his bag, and leave in a hurry. You could have just washed these yourself. While muttering, I loaded his laundry into the machine. That's when I heard something drop. I looked down but found nothing. Yet, I was sure I heard something. I searched again, more carefully this time. What had fallen? As I stepped back, something sparkled at my feet. Here it is. What is this? I picked up the shimmering object and examined it. Oh. I was at a loss for words. In my hand was a small earring, shining. My mind went blank for a moment, but I wasn't as shocked as I expected. By the time he stopped coming home, it was clear to everyone. Steve was having an affair. Deep down, I had my suspicions. But, fearing the truth, I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to hurt myself. Now, confronted with reality, I couldn't run anymore. I decided to face Steve squarely. With evidence of his affair, it was time to end our marriage. The next day, I headed to a detective agency. A few days later, Steve's affair was confirmed. The other woman was a young and attractive new employee at his branch. Just as our marriage began to crack, this young employee joined, and Steve, with his calm demeanor and kind smile, captivated her. He became her mentor, which allowed him to get close and start an affair. I learned for the first time that Steve had been involved with numerous female employees before. Using his position as a superior, he approached women with sweet words and deepened their relationships. That was his cunning method. I was just one of the many women ensnared by his tactics. The reason he chose me as his marriage partner was probably because I was very convenient for him. Frustration welled up inside me. It was time to end this life. I was determined. That night, Steve came home as usual with a large pile of laundry. You don't have to come home just for this. You could have her do your laundry. I spoke to Steve's back. He stopped and turned around. What are you talking about? I told you, it's work. Then he looked at me with a cold gaze. So, is this part of your work too? What exactly are you teaching this female employee after work ends? I thrust several photos at him. The photos showed the two of them leaving the workplace and entering the apartment where the female employee lived alone. What is this? He seemed unable to hide his surprise. Don't tell me you don't know. I've investigated everything. And this earring, wasn't she looking for it? It was caught on your shirt. He froze as he looked at the earring resting in my palm. I never thought you were such a womanizer. Let's end this. Now you're free to date openly. Saying that, I handed him the divorce papers. Silence filled the air. He stared at the divorce papers in shock. Suddenly, he started to laugh. What's this? Are you jealous because we can't have kids? If you have time to take these photos, why not work hard on getting pregnant? What a thing to say. Who's really making excuses here? I struggled to contain my rising anger. Divorce? That's exactly what I want. She's pregnant. I've been wanting to cut ties with you. I'm only thinking about my new family now. To think he got his mistress pregnant, what an irresponsible man. I was speechless. And so, we divorced. It was an anticlimactic ending. Steve took only the essentials and left. I decided to move out of the apartment we lived in together. After finalizing the apartment lease cancellation, I was clearing out the room. Everything he left behind went into trash bags. I had no lingering feelings. Then, the doorbell rang. Who could it be at this time? I slowly opened the door. Outside stood a man. His hair was unkempt, and he wore dirty clothes. It was a man I had never seen before. The man apologized for his sudden visit and began to speak. I was astonished by his words. 3 years had passed since then. After the divorce, I continued to save money and finally reached my target amount. I had achieved my dream. I resigned from the travel agency. One day, I was walking through a famous tourist spot. It's one of the most renowned in the US. The town was popular for tours, and people walked around happily. Lately, new sweet shops and cafes had opened, attracting young people too. I loved this vibrant tourist spot and had moved nearby. While enjoying a stroll in the pleasant weather, a familiar voice called my name from behind. Who could it be? I turned around, shocked and at a loss for words at the sight before me. It was Steve, my ex-husband from 3 years ago. Never thought we'd meet here. On a solo trip? Pathetic. He was wearing work clothes. His beard was unkempt, and his hair was a mess. I wonder if he quit working at the travel agency. I never expected to run into him here. My pleasant walk was ruined. You know, I heard you're in debt hell because of that futile infertility treatment. My ex-husband approached me with a sarcastic smile on his face. It's pitiful how hard you try for nothing. Then he looked down on me and sneered. He wanted to flaunt his happiness with his new wife and child, thinking he was the winner and mocking me. Whose story are you talking about? I gave Steve a cold look. I heard it from the landlord of the place you used to live. Seems like you're in debt. After I left, the man you borrowed money from came to collect, didn't he? You borrowed for expensive infertility treatments, and in the end, you got nothing but a huge debt. The man he mentioned was someone who visited me while I was cleaning out the apartment after Steve moved out. Death? You're mistaken. It's better to be mistaken. I confronted my ex-husband with the truth, which was shocking for him. 3 years after our divorce, while I was cleaning the apartment for moving out, indeed a man visited. That man was not a debt collector but actually Steve's father, whom I had been told had run off with another woman. His father had come looking for Steve, having heard of the apartment we lived in. By then, we had divorced, and the apartment lease was cancelled. The father, not knowing Steve's apartment number because the nameplate and mailbox label were removed, asked the landlord, mentioning only Steve's surname and claiming he needed to see him because he had lent him money. The landlord, frightened at the thought of a debt collector, immediately contacted me. I told the landlord, let him in, please, because the landlord loves gossip. And I feared strange rumors would spread. So, the landlord, thinking the father was indeed a debt collector, probably told Steve in a way that made it sound amusing. Steve took it seriously. The reason Steve's father visited was to ask for money. He was left by his mistress and was struggling. He sought out Steve's whereabouts to borrow money. Unaware of our divorce, he apologized to me. But to me, a divorced woman, this man had no relation. He was neither my relative nor anything to me. I gave Steve's contact information to his father as he asked. After that, he left. Hearing the story, Steve was furious. You gave him my contact? Since then, I've been bombarded with support inquiries. It's been a nightmare. In the lively tourist spot, Steve's shouting echoed. Why should I support him? He abandoned me and Mom. Showing up out of nowhere asking for help, that's just too much. It's understandable why Steve would be angry. It was purely his father's selfishness. However, I had no sympathy for that. And then, my wife said she wanted a divorce because of the troublesome father I have. That's unfortunate. But, for the sake of our child to be born, I convinced her to start over as a couple. In the end, helping out with her family business resolved everything. I noticed the company name on Steve's work clothes. It seems his wife's family runs a cleaning service. Steve gave up his position as a branch manager of a travel agency to work daily entering and exiting inns as a cleaner. The income from the cleaning business was entirely managed by his wife. So Steve had no money of his own to spend. It appears his wife, aware of his infidelity, wanted him to quit the travel agency and work under her parents' supervision. I admired the young yet astute wife. You have a strong-willed wife. But it's rare for a wife to restrict her husband so much. Is there another reason, I wonder? Steve suddenly became quiet, and his face turned pale. What do you mean? Are you hiding something else? I'm not hiding anything. Just one thing has been on my mind. I wonder if the child born to you and your wife is really yours. I said this while gently rubbing my slightly swollen belly. My ex-husband froze at the sight, as if time had stopped just for him. The truth was, I was pregnant. Just as the test results showed, there was nothing wrong with my body. After our divorce, I led a life far beyond what my ex-husband could have imagined. It was a life filled with happiness. Saying this, I made my way into the high-end inn in front of me. Then, wait. Listen to me, he said, trying to hold me back. But I had no obligation to listen to him any further. We didn't ask for your cleaning services. So, please don't come in. My ex-husband looked at me, puzzled. What do you mean by our? Who are you to this inn? There was no need for further discussion, but I decided to say one last thing. I am the owner of this inn. My ex-husband's face turned pale again. My parents loved this tourist spot. When I was a child, our family often spent time in a small inn here. That inn, filled with our memories, had become old and overshadowed by the new, larger inns around it. Eventually, it faced financial difficulties and was on the verge of closing down. My dream was to buy this inn. I saved most of my income from the travel agency and, thanks to a frugal lifestyle, reached my savings goal. With my inheritance from my parents and my savings, I purchased the inn, renovated it, and reopened it for business. Using my experience from the travel agency, I created an inn that was comfortable for young and old, men and women alike. The inn's reputation grew rapidly. Now, it's considered a luxury inn, and my net worth has reached $13 million. One of the inn's most popular features is the food. Menus are tailored for each guest, and many customers return for the meals alone. The dedication of our chef, who spares no effort for the sake of our guests, is packed into every dish. I shared his compassionate spirit, and we were drawn to each other. Eventually, I remarried him. I got pregnant soon after our marriage. There was no longer any reason to talk to my ex-husband. I turned my back on him. Please, wait. He probably wanted to stop me for money. To me, he was a stranger now. I owed him nothing. I have nothing more to say to you. Don't ever appear in front of me again. I entered the inn, dismissing him. Even though my ex-husband tried to follow me into the inn, he was stopped by the staff and kicked out. His calls for me faded away and eventually disappeared. Our unexpected reunion marked a turning point in both of our lives. A few weeks later, a letter addressed to me arrived at the inn. I was surprised to see the sender. It was my ex-husband. Everything with him was supposed to be over. Curious and slightly nervous, I opened the envelope. The densely written words on a piece of stationery had his distinctive handwriting. There was no doubt it was from him. The letter contained astonishing news. It read that after our reunion, my ex-husband began to suspect the infertility issue might lie with him and asked his wife if the child was truly his. Of course, his wife insisted it was his child. But he had always felt a discrepancy too significant to ignore. Because the child was too different from him. After persistently questioning his wife, she finally confessed. The child he thought was his turned out to be the child of another man his wife had dated during her college years. After graduating and getting a job at a travel agency, she quickly caught the attention of her future husband, Steve, and they started a relationship. However, for her, it was just a fling, and her true love was a boyfriend from her college days. She became pregnant with her boyfriend's child, and though she considered marriage, he disappeared upon learning of her pregnancy. Feeling overwhelmed by the prospect of being a young, unmarried mother, she lied to Steve, claiming the child was his, and married him for a financially stable life. After marrying, when she learned that Steve's father had abandoned his family for an affair, it reminded her of being abandoned by her boyfriend. To control Steve, known for his infidelities, she threatened divorce to keep him in line. She made him work under her parents, managing his salary herself, giving him no disposable income. Fed up with this constrained life, Steve went mad upon discovering the truth. Their daily arguments became unbearable, leading Steve to choose divorce. However, his in-laws, siding with his wife, refused to accept the divorce. Despite this, Steve chose divorce and fled from his wife's life. As a result, Steve was left with little money. Now, he has no place to live and roams from one hostel to another. Unable to find a job due to the lack of a suit and poor personal appearance. He survives day-to-day through temporary work. The letter expressed a desire to return to those days. He shouldn't make a mockery of wanting to reconcile with me. Indeed, I pity Steve's current situation, but it's the path he chose. The infertility tests, the affair, and his mockery of me during our reunion, he always acted selfishly. Never considering my feelings. I'm not the same person I was back then. I have a bright future ahead with my new husband and our baby on the way. I've informed him through a lawyer that if he tries to approach or contact me again, I will file a restraining order. Then, I tore up his letter. I'm due to give birth next month. While I'm thrilled to meet our baby, I also can't hide my anxiety about my first childbirth. But with my kind husband's encouragement, I'm getting through each day. He always cares for my well-being and helps with household chores on his days off. Because he's by my side, I know everything will be all right. Today is my husband's day off. We'll walk through the tourist spot, enjoying the changing seasons and then taking deep breaths. It's our favorite walking route. The baby just kicked. As I said that, my husband hurriedly placed his hand on my belly and gently talked to the baby. This happiness isn't something to take for granted. That's why I cherish it. And once again, I took a deep breath of the air in this town surrounded by nature.